The Mercedes S-Class pulls up to Barrett Memorial Hospital, its black paint gleaming under floodlights that turn night into artificial day. Polished Italian shoes touch pavement as the door swings open, and a man steps out, 62 years old, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that costs more than most people earn in 6 months. 400 guests in black tie mill around the glass atrium, champagne flutes catching light like tiny stars. The murmur of conversation dies in waves as he walks toward the entrance, spine straight, shoulders back, every inch of him radiating the quiet authority of someone who built empires rather than inherited them. A woman in a wedding gown freezes mid-laugh, her hand clutching the arm of a man in a white dinner jacket. The champagne glass she holds tips slightly amber liquid, threatening to spill. Her mother, standing beside her in peacock blue silk, glances up from her phone and goes absolutely still. Recognition spreads through the crowd like wind through wheat heads, turning voices, dropping to whispers, phones emerging from clutch purses and jacket pockets. 12 months ago, Cassandra divorced him as a broke janitor who mopped these very floors. Tonight, 300 people are about to learn who he really is. The screen cuts to black. 12 months earlier. The Whitmore estate sits on 4 acres in Connecticut's Gold Coast, the kind of property that whispers old money through every carefully maintained hedge and hand-laid stone path. The dining room could seat 20 comfortably, though tonight only 6 chairs are occupied around the mahogany table that gleams like dark water under the chandelier's crystal teardrops. Thaddeus Barrett sits at the far end wearing a cardigan Cassandra bought him at Goodwill 3 years ago. The elbows have worn through in places, but he mended them himself with navy thread that doesn't quite match. His hands rest quietly in his lap, fingers interlaced, while Lenora Whitmore, his mother-in-law, holds court from her position at the table's head. The woman has the kind of beauty that age turns sharp rather than soft, all angles and edges, her blonde hair maintained at considerable expense to hide the gray that nature intended. She lifts her wine glass, examining the Chardonnay against the firelight before taking a deliberate sip. Her eyes, pale blue and calculating, sweep across Thaddeus with the same critical assessment she might give a piece of furniture she's considering donating to charity. "Thaddeus, must you slouch? We're celebrating Cassandra's promotion to Director of Nursing." He straightens his spine, the movement automatic after 5 years of similar corrections. "Congratulations, Cass. You worked hard for this." Cassandra doesn't meet his eyes. She sits 3 chairs down, wearing a navy sheath dress that fits her like ambition-made fabric, her blonde hair swept into a French twist that probably took an hour to perfect. At 35, she has the kind of beauty that photographs well and knows its sharp cheekbones, wide-set hazel eyes, a mouth that smiles often but rarely reaches those eyes anymore. She nods at his words but directs her response to her mother. "Thank you. The board was very pleased with my restructuring proposal." Lenora sets down her glass with a sharp clink that demands attention. Yes, she works hard. Unlike some people content mopping floors at 62. The words land like stones thrown into still water. Cassandra's brother Richmond, 40, wearing a suit that cost more than Thaddeus's monthly salary and his cover identity, lets out a bark of laughter that he doesn't bother to disguise as a cough. His wife, Margaret, a mouse of a woman who married into this family and learned quickly to mirror its cruelties, hides her smile behind her napkin. Thaddeus keeps his expression neutral, a skill he's perfected over decades of boardrooms where showing weakness meant losing billions. He reaches for his water glass, the movement unhurried, and takes a slow sip before responding. "I'm content where I am." The statement sits there simple and unadorned, while Lenora's eyes narrow with the particular disdain she reserves for people who don't share her definition of success. She turns to Cassandra, deliberately excluding Thaddeus from the conversation as if he's already vanished. "Cassandra, darling, you're Director of Nursing at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the state. You deserve a power couple dynamic, someone who matches your accomplishments. Look at the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers. Not this." She gestures toward Thaddeus without looking at him, the wave of her hand dismissing 5 years of marriage. Like smoke she's wafting away. Richmond leans forward, elbows on the table in a posture his mother would never tolerate from anyone else. "Thad, when are you going to apply for management? You've been in maintenance for 5 years. Most guys your age are thinking about retirement from corner offices, not pushing a mop bucket. Thaddeus sets down his water glass. The question deserves an answer even if the asker doesn't deserve his patience. I enjoy the work. It's honest labor. Richmond laughs again this time without even attempting to soften it. Honest labor. That's what losers say when they've given up on winning. Margaret nods along her eyes, darting between her husband and mother-in-law, checking to make sure her agreement registers. Cassandra pushes food around her plate, duck breast with cherry reduction that cost more per ounce than Thaddeus's hourly wage, and says nothing. Her silence cuts deeper than her mother's contempt or her brother's mockery. Once she would have defended him. Once she looked at him like he hung the moon instead of mopped the floors beneath it. The conversation shifts to hospital politics, safe territory where Thaddeus has no voice. Cassandra mentions the planned expansion, her voice gaining energy as she describes the $200 million project that could redefine Barrett Memorial's position in the Northeast healthcare market. If the board approves the funding, I could oversee the entire new wing. 300 beds, state-of-the-art cardiac units, a research facility that would attract the best minds in the country. Lenora practically glows with vicarious ambition. Who's providing the capital? Some anonymous donor. The board is being incredibly secretive about it. Won't even tell the senior directors. Very mysterious. Thaddeus shifts almost imperceptibly in his chair, a movement so slight that no one notices. His expression remains carefully neutral as he cuts into his own duck, which he barely tastes. The irony sits heavy in his chest. Cassandra is campaigning to oversee an expansion he approved 3 weeks ago, funded with $200 million from accounts she doesn't know exist. Maybe they value privacy, he offers quietly. Some people prefer to do good without recognition. Lenora's laugh could strip paint from walls. Oh, the janitor has opinions on hospital finance and philanthropic strategy. How absolutely adorable. Richmond joins in his laughter, louder and crueler. What's next? Thad, going to explain. Venture capital to us. Give us stock tips. Thaddeus meets Richmond's eyes across the table, and for just a moment something flickers in his gaze, something old and dangerous and utterly controlled. Then it's gone, replaced by the mild acceptance he wears like armor. He returns to his meal without another word. The doorbell chimes, a melodious sound that echoes through the first floor. Lenora checks her watch. Cartier naturally, and her smile sharpens into something predatory. Oh, perfect timing. Cassandra. I hope you don't mind, but I invited Dr. Preston Aldridge to join us for dessert. Cassandra's fork freezes halfway to her mouth. Mother, what are you? The question dies as footsteps approach from the foyer, accompanied by the low murmur of the housekeeper's greeting. A man appears in the dining room doorway, and even Thaddeus has to admit he looks the part Lenora is casting. Preston Aldridge stands just over 6 feet tall, with the kind of conventional handsomeness that ages well on men, with Money's square jaw, dark hair touched with distinguished gray at the temples, broad shoulders filling out a cashmere blazer that probably cost $3,000. The Rolex on his wrist catches the chandelier light as he raises his hand in greeting. Mrs. Whitmore, what a lovely home. And you must be Cassandra. Your mother has told me so much about your brilliant work at the hospital. He crosses to Cassandra's chair and takes her hand, brushing his lips across her knuckles, in a gesture that manages to be both old-fashioned and presumptuous. Thaddeus. He doesn't acknowledge at all, his gaze sliding past the older man as if he's part of the furniture. Lenora practically vibrates with satisfaction as she makes introductions that carefully minimize Thaddeus's existence. Preston is chief of cardiac surgery at Barrett Memorial, Johns Hopkins, educated, published in every major journal. He's pioneering a new valve replacement technique that's getting international attention. Preston takes the seat the housekeeper has quickly prepared between Cassandra and Richmond, settling in like he's been part of this family for years rather than minutes. He launches into a story about a complicated surgery, name-dropping colleagues and medical terminology with the casual confidence of someone who knows his audience is impressed. Cassandra leans in slightly, her professional interest genuine, even if everything else about the situation reeks of setup. We should discuss the expansion project over dinner sometime. Preston says, his eyes holding Cassandra's a beat too long. Your mother mentioned you're spearheading the nursing infrastructure design. I'd love to hear your vision, perhaps somewhere we can talk without interruption. Just the two of us. The implication hangs in the air like expensive perfume. Richmond grins openly now, enjoying the theater of watching his sister get courted while her husband sits silent at the other end of the table. Margaret looks scandalized in the way people do when they're secretly thrilled. Cassandra's cheeks flush slightly, whether from flattery, embarrassment, or anger. Thaddeus can't quite tell anymore. The housekeeper returns with dessert, individual apple tarts, with vanilla bean ice cream plated with the kind of artistry that suggests someone spent an hour on presentation. Thaddeus recognizes them immediately because he made them this morning before his shift at the hospital, using the Whitmore kitchen before anyone else woke up. The crust is his mother's recipe, passed down through 3 generations of Barretts who baked because they loved it, not because they needed to impress anyone. Lenora looks at the dessert, then at the housekeeper. "What is this apple tart, ma'am?" "Mr. Barrett prepared it this morning." Lenora's expression could freeze water. She pushes the plate away untouched. "I'll pass." "Richmond, why don't you tell Preston about that charity gala you're organizing? I'm sure Cassandra would love to bring a colleague." The message couldn't be clearer if she'd skywritten it. Preston smiles, already assuming Cassandra's agreement, while Richmond launches into details about a fundraiser at the yacht club. Thaddeus takes a bite of his own tart, tastes nothing but ashes, and sets down his fork. The conversation swirls around him for another 20 minutes. Talk of golf handicaps and summer homes, charitable boards and exclusive clubs, all the social machinery that separates people like the Whitmores from people they assume are like Thaddeus. He lets it wash over him, contributing nothing, while his mind catalogues every slight and files it away with the precision of someone who built a $3 billion empire on the principle that information is power and patience is profit. Finally, his coffee service begins, espresso in cups so delicate they're nearly translucent. Cassandra stands. Her hands shake slightly as she grips the back of her chair, and Thaddeus notices with the attention to detail that made him successful. She's nervous. Whatever comes next, she's been rehearsing it. "I have something to say." The table goes quiet. Even Preston stops mid-sentence about his golf game in Hilton Head. Lenora sets down her cup with deliberate care, her expression arranged into something that looks like surprise but reads more like anticipation. Richmond leans back in his chair, arms crossed, grinning like he knows the punchline to a joke the rest of the room hasn't heard yet. Thaddeus feels his chest tighten, not fear exactly, but the cold recognition of a moment he's been expecting for months. He keeps his hands steady on the table, fingers loosely clasped, and waits. "Thad, you're a good man." The words should be compliment. The way she says them turns them into eulogy. "But I need more than good. I need partnership, ambition, someone who understands what I'm trying to build." She reaches into the designer handbag hanging on her chair and pulls out a manila envelope, the kind lawyers use for important documents. It slides across the polished table, stopping precisely in front of Thaddeus's plate with the half-eaten tart he baked that morning. The envelope sits there like a snake coiled on the mahogany, and everyone at the table knows what it contains before Cassandra says another word. "I want a divorce. I need a partner who matches my professional life, who can stand beside me in the world I'm building. Preston and we connect on that level. He understands what it takes to succeed." Preston has the decency to look uncomfortable for about 3 seconds before his expression settles into something between sympathy and smug satisfaction. He reaches over and places his hand on Cassandra's arm, a gesture of support that doubles as a claim of territory. Lenora clasps her hands together like she's watching her daughter finally take off training wheels after years of warning that she'd never learn to ride. Finally. "Darling, I've been telling you for 3 years that you needed someone who could match your trajectory. You can't soar with eagles when you're married to—" She catches herself before finishing the sentence, but the comparison hangs there anyway. Thaddeus imagines she was going to say pigeons, or maybe turkeys. Something flightless and earthbound, something beneath the Whitmore family's lofty aspirations. He picks up the envelope. The paper feels expensive, heavy stock that cost more than it needed to because lawyers charge for everything, including the packaging of heartbreak. He doesn't open it. He knows what's inside divorce papers drafted by the best family law attorney money can buy. Terms carefully structured to make him look grasping if he fights, and pathetic if he accepts. "Is this truly what you want?" His voice stays level. No accusation in it, just genuine inquiry. For a moment so brief it might be imagination. Something flickers across Cassandra's face. Doubt, maybe. Regret. Then it's gone, replaced by the determined expression of someone who's made up her mind and won't let sentiment derail her plans. "Yes. Preston and I understand each other. We want the same things. He gets me in ways you never could." Preston nods along, his hand still on her arm. "Nothing personal, old man. Cassandra deserves someone who can provide at her level. It's just biology women select for status and resources. You can't fault her for following nature." The pseudo-intellectual justification might be the most insulting part of this entire dinner theater. Thaddeus sets down the envelope and folds his hands again, a gesture that looks like prayer, but feels more like restraint. His wedding ring, simple gold band, no diamonds because Cassandra said she wanted something understated, catches the light. Richmond leans forward, grinning like Christmas came early. "The settlement offer is generous, Thad, $75,000 and the apartment in Queens. That's more than fair for someone in your position. The apartment in Queens is a one-bedroom walk-up in a neighborhood that gentrification hasn't reached yet. Cassandra inherited it from an aunt and has been trying to unload it for years. $75,000 is roughly what Thaddeus makes in interest every 6 hours, though no one at this table knows that. He considers explaining that he owns the building where that apartment sits, along with 47 other residential properties in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. He considers mentioning that the wine they're drinking, a 2015 Chateau Margaux that Lenora selected to impress Preston, came from a vineyard his holding company acquired last year. Instead, he stands. The movement is unhurried, dignified, the way he'd stand to leave any business meeting where the terms being offered insult his intelligence. He picks up the envelope and slides it back across the table to Cassandra. "I don't want your money." Lenora's eyes narrow, suspicious of his motives, because in her world everyone wants money. Richmond's grin falters, slightly confused by someone turning down a payout. Preston just looks pleased, probably thinking Thaddeus is too prideful to accept charity, which makes him even more pathetic. "Mr. Barrett, you're entitled to compensation." The lawyer's voice belongs to a woman Thaddeus didn't notice before sitting quietly at the far end of the table with a briefcase and a tablet. Cassandra must have planned this entire evening down to having legal counsel present for the ambush. The attention to detail is almost impressive. He cuts her off with a gentle shake of his head. "I came into this marriage with nothing. I'll leave with nothing. It's not quite true, of course. He came in with $3 billion and change, but they don't know that. What he means is that he came looking for love, real, uncomplicated affection from someone who saw him rather than his empire, and he's leaving with the knowledge that Cassandra never did see him. She saw a maintenance worker in coveralls, someone to feel vaguely embarrassed about at hospital functions, a good man who wasn't good enough. He signs the papers where the lawyer indicates his signature, neat and practiced from signing thousands of documents over the years, most of them worth more than this entire estate. When he finishes, he caps the pen, his own Mont Blanc he keeps in his pocket that cost more than the Whitmore's monthly wine budget, and slides the papers back across the table. Then he extends his hand to Cassandra. She stares at it for a moment, confused, before taking it automatically. Her palm is cold and slightly damp. "I wish you happiness, Cassandra. Truly." The sincerity in his voice seems to throw her. She was probably expecting anger, maybe begging, perhaps even threats. Instead, she gets grace, and it disarms her enough that tears spring to her eyes before she blinks them away. She nods without speaking, unable to articulate whatever tangle of emotions is working through her brain. Thaddeus releases her hand and turns to Lenora. "Mrs. Whitmore, thank you for your hospitality these past 5 years." The formal distance in his tone, not mother, just Mrs. Whitmore, registers as a small rebellion. Lenora's mouth tightens, but she inclines her head in what might generously be called acknowledgement. Richmond raises his wine glass in a mocking salute. Preston doesn't bother to hide his relief that the scene is ending without drama. Thaddeus walks toward the door, his footsteps steady on the Persian rug that probably cost 6 figures. The housekeeper appears with his jacket, a worn canvas thing from L.L. Bean that's seen better decades, and he shrugs into it while the family watches. As he reaches for the doorknob, Cassandra's voice follows him. Thad. He pauses but doesn't turn around, waiting. The apartment keys. I'll need them back. Of course. I'll leave them with the front desk at the hospital tomorrow. Then he's through the door and down the stone steps, leaving behind the warmth and light of the Whitmore estate for the cool October night. His breath mists in the air as he walks down the long driveway past the manicured hedges and the fountain that gets drained every winter. His footsteps crunch on gravel, the only sound in the wealthy silence of a neighborhood where even the crickets seem muted by money. At the end of the driveway, just beyond the ornate iron gates, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom sits idling in the shadows. Its headlights are off, making it nearly invisible against the tree line, but Thaddeus knew it would be there. He timed his exit perfectly. The rear door opens before he reaches it, and a man in an impeccable dark suit steps out. Mid-40s British accent so crisp it could cut glass, the bearing of someone who spent 20 years in military special operations before transitioning to private security. Good evening, Mr. Barrett. Rough dinner. James Montgomery has been with Thaddeus for 15 years, ever since Thaddeus quietly paid for the experimental cancer treatment that saved James's daughter. The hospital said the procedure was too risky, insurance wouldn't cover it, and James was selling everything he owned to scrape together the fee. Thaddeus wrote the check anonymously and hired the best oncologist in Boston. When James discovered who'd saved his daughter's life, he showed up at Thaddeus's office and asked what he could do to repay the debt. Thaddeus offered him a job. James has never asked for a raise, never taken a sick day, and would walk through fire if Thaddeus asked. The marriage is over, James. James nods, showing no surprise. He's been watching this slow-motion disaster for months, same as Thaddeus. Shall I initiate protocol reckoning, sir? Not yet. Let her enjoy her choice first. Let her believe she made the right decision. Thaddeus slides into the Rolls-Royce's leather interior, and James closes the door with the solid thunk of German engineering applied to British luxury. The car smells faintly of jasmine and expensive leather, a world apart from the Whitmore dining room's careful performance of wealth. This is real money, the kind that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't have to. The partition between driver and passenger remains down as James pulls away from the curb, the Phantom's engine so quiet it might as well be electric. Through the tinted windows, Thaddeus watches the Whitmore estate recede, its windows glowing warm in the darkness, like a Thomas Kincaid painting of domestic bliss. Through one of those windows he can see silhouettes moving. Cassandra, probably back at the table, Preston's arm around her shoulders, Lenora already planning the engagement announcement. James catches his eye in the rearview mirror. Where to, sir? The penthouse. Yes. And James, call Eva. Tell her I need to see her tonight. The drive from Connecticut to Manhattan takes 45 minutes at this time of night, Interstate 95, a river of red taillights flowing toward the city's glow. Thaddeus doesn't turn on the television or check his phone. He just sits in the quiet darkness and watches America slide past his window, strip malls giving way to suburbs giving way to the industrial wasteland of the Bronx, and finally the towers of Manhattan rising like prayers rendered in steel and glass. The Rolls-Royce pulls into an underground garage beneath a building on Park Avenue, the kind of residential tower where apartments start at $20 million and the penthouse never officially went on the market. James uses a key card to access the private elevator, and they ride 60 floors in silence. When the doors open, they don't open onto a hallway. They open directly into Thaddeus's home. The penthouse sprawls across the entire top floor, 8,000 square feet of carefully curated comfort that Cassandra never saw, never suspected existed. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame Manhattan like the world's most expensive painting, the city lights competing with the stars they've drowned out. The furniture is mid-century modern, all clean lines and honest materials chosen for comfort rather than show. The art on the walls is good but not flashy. A Hopper study of American loneliness, a Diebenkorn abstract that suggests California coastline, a Wyeth landscape that might be Maine in winter. A woman rises from the sofa as Thaddeus steps out of the elevator. Evangeline Barrett is 28 years old, auburn-haired and green-eyed with her mother's delicate features sharpened by her father's steel will. She wears jeans and a Harvard Business School sweatshirt despite the executive vice president title she holds at Barrett Health Empire. When she looks at her father, he can see her measuring the damage, cataloging the cracks in his composure, the way she'd analyze a quarterly earnings report. Dad. How bad. Thaddeus removes his canvas jacket and hangs it on a hook by the elevator, the same hook where he keeps the tailored suits and cashmere overcoats he wears to board meetings. The juxtaposition would be funny if it weren't so pointed. She chose the surgeon, Preston Aldridge, chief of cardiac. Johns Hopkins published pioneering some new valve technique. Eva's jaw tightens. Let me guess. Mother Lenora orchestrated the whole thing. Invited him to dinner like some kind of debutante ball where Cassandra could be auctioned to the highest bidder. Something like that. He crosses to the bar and pours himself 2 fingers of Macallan 25 neat. Eva doesn't drink. She watched her mother's relationship with alcohol turn destructive in the final years, but she watches him with the careful attention of someone making sure he stops at 2 fingers. Thaddeus appreciates the vigilance even as he resents needing it. When are you going to tell her you own the hospital? Eva asks. And there's no judgment in the question, just genuine curiosity about her father's strategy. When truth serves justice, not before. That's cryptic even for you. Thaddeus takes a sip of whiskey that costs $300 an ounce and tastes like peat smoke and regret. He moves to the windows, looking down at the city where millions of people are living their lives in complete ignorance of the dramas playing out in penthouses and estates above their pay grade. Cassandra is campaigning to oversee the hospital expansion, the $200 million project that I approved 3 weeks ago. She doesn't know I'm the anonymous donor. She thinks she's competing for the position on merit. Eva processes this, her business school brain already running scenarios. So, you're going to let her win the position and then reveal yourself? No. I'm going to let the process run fairly. If she's the best candidate, she gets the job. I won't interfere, even after she just humiliated you, especially after. I want to know if she can do the work. If she earns that position, she deserves it regardless of our personal history. Eva stares at him like he's grown a second head. You're either the most principled man I've ever met or a masochist. I'm not sure which. Can't I be both? The laugh that escapes Eva is half affection, half frustration. She crosses to stand beside him at the window, looking out at the same view from a perspective 6 inches lower. Dad, when this comes out, and it will come out, she's going to be destroyed. The hospital staff will know. The media will know. That social climbing mother of hers will know. You're setting up the most public humiliation I've ever seen. Thaddeus shakes his head slowly. I'm not setting up anything. I'm just going to exist as myself. The truth doesn't need revenge, it just needs patience. Poetic. Also possibly bullshit. Maybe. They stand there in comfortable silence, father and daughter, both of them products of wealth so vast it becomes abstract. Through the window, Thaddeus can see the building where Barrett Health Empire's corporate headquarters occupy 15 floors of prime Manhattan real estate. He built that company from nothing, a single community hospital in Maine that he bought with money borrowed against his father's lobster boat back when he was 25 and too stupid to know building a healthcare empire was impossible. Eva breaks the silence first. The board meeting is Tuesday. The expansion funding vote. I'll be there. As yourself or as the janitor? As both. I have a hospital shift at 6 a.m. board meeting at 10. I'll change in between. Eva shakes her head, but she's smiling despite herself. You're insane. Probably. She kisses his cheek and heads for the elevator. Get some sleep, Dad. And for what it's worth, Cassandra didn't deserve you. The elevator doors close and Thaddeus is alone with his whiskey and his city and the ghost of a marriage that died over apple tart he baked himself. He finishes his drink and sets the crystal glass in the sink. He'll wash it himself in the morning before his shift the way he always does. Then he walks to his bedroom and opens the closet where his 2 lives hang side-by-side, coveralls and canvas jackets on one side, bespoke suits on the other, like some kind of existential metaphor for the distance between who you are and who people think you are. He pulls out the coveralls for tomorrow, already planning the route he'll take to the hospital. He could helicopter in, have James drive him, take the private elevator that connects directly to the executive wing. Instead, he'll take the subway from Grand Central, walk the last 6 blocks, and punch in at the maintenance office like he has for 5 years. Because the test isn't over yet. The expansion is approved, but the grand opening is still 12 months away. Cassandra will campaign for that position, probably spend the next year preparing for the moment she thinks will define her career. And on that day, when 400 people gather in black tie to celebrate the new wing, when Cassandra stands in a spotlight and gives speeches about vision and leadership, when Preston stands beside her with his arm around her waist like he owns her accomplishments by proximity. On that day, Thaddeus will simply attend as himself, not the janitor, not the abandoned husband. Just Thaddeus Barrett, the man who built everything she's celebrating, wearing a tuxedo that costs more than her annual salary, arriving in a way that makes it impossible to ignore his presence. And the truth will do what truth always does. When given enough time and space, it will speak for itself. The Tuesday morning subway from Grand Central smells like brake dust and someone's breakfast burrito, the car packed with bodies pressed together in that peculiar urban intimacy where everyone pretends they're alone. Thaddeus stands near the center pole, wearing yesterday's coveralls, a thermos of coffee in one hand, while a woman in Chanel elbows past him without apology. Her handbag costs more than his monthly maintenance salary, at least on paper. In reality, Thaddeus could buy her entire wardrobe with the interest that accumulated in his accounts during this 15-minute commute. Barrett Memorial Hospital rises 23 stories above the Hartford skyline, glass and steel reflecting clouds that threaten rain. The maintenance entrance sits around back past the loading docks where morning deliveries stack up like Tetris blocks. Thaddeus badges in at 6:04 a.m., exactly 4 minutes late, which is early by maintenance standards. The time clock stamps his card with a metallic chunk that feels almost nostalgic. Technology left over from the 80s, never upgraded, because who spends money on maintenance workers? Morning, Thad. Coffee's fresh if you want some. Marcus Chen. No relation to anyone, despite what the surname suggests. Third-generation American whose grandfather came through Angel Island looks up from his locker. He's been working maintenance here for 30 years, longer than Thaddeus has been pretending to, and his hands show it in the calluses and scars that map a life of honest labor. The coffee he's offering comes from a pot that's been burning since 5 a.m., thick enough to strip paint. Thanks, but I brought my own. Thaddeus holds up his thermos, which contains Jamaican Blue Mountain brewed in a machine that cost more than Marcus makes in a month. The irony tastes richer than the coffee. Marcus nods and doesn't push, because that's not how it works in the maintenance break room. You keep your head down, do your shift, and don't ask questions about why a guy pushing 62 is still mopping floors. Third-floor bathrooms need servicing. Somebody had a party in the men's room last night, looks like tequila and regret. I'll take it. The maintenance cart is the same one Thaddeus has pushed for 5 years. One wheel slightly crooked so it pulls left if you're not paying attention. He loads it with supplies from the closet that smells like industrial cleaner and mildew, then rolls toward the service elevator. The hospital is just waking up, night shift dragging toward finish lines, day shift trickling in with coffee cups and complaints about traffic. Nurses cluster at stations reviewing charts. Doctors stride past with that particular confidence that comes from saving lives and knowing it. Cassandra appears on the 7th floor, stepping out of the main elevator with Preston Aldridge at her side. She's wearing burgundy scrubs today, the expensive kind that actually fit instead of hanging like surgical tents. Her hair pulled into a ponytail that somehow manages to look professional rather than rushed. Preston has his hand on the small of her back, possessive and casual, at once steering her toward the cardiac unit like she's his personal property. Thaddeus is servicing the water fountain near the elevator bank, his back to them, but he watches their reflection in the polished chrome. Preston leans in to whisper something that makes Cassandra laugh, her head tilting back in genuine amusement. They look good together, Thaddeus has to admit. They look like they belong in the same world, speaking the same language of accomplishment and ambition. They pass within 3 feet of him without a glance. To Cassandra, he's just the maintenance guy fixing the fountain, no more worthy of acknowledgement than the floor tiles or ceiling lights. The invisibility is perfect, exactly what he designed, but something in his chest tightens anyway. Old muscle memory from when being invisible to her meant failure rather than strategy. The service elevator takes him to the executive wing on the 20th floor, accessible only with special clearance that maintenance badges provide. The carpet up here is thicker, the art on the walls actual paintings rather than motivational posters about teamwork. Thaddeus empties trash cans from offices occupied by administrators who make six figures and think they run this hospital. In the CEO's office, Samuel Brenner, competent enough but installed by the board rather than rising on merit, a stack of papers sits on the desktop sheet visible, Expansion Project, Confidential. Thaddeus glances at it while replacing the trash bag. The document outlines the $200 million investment he approved 3 weeks ago, presented as if the funding appeared through divine intervention rather than his deliberate decision to test his ex-wife's competence. The director position for the new wing remains unfilled, applications under review. Cassandra's name appears on the short list, third of 5 candidates, all impressive on paper. He leaves the office exactly as he found it and pushes his cart toward the service stairs. At 9:30 he'll change clothes in the private bathroom on the 23rd floor, the one that doesn't officially exist on building plans because it connects to the owner's suite that Cassandra doesn't know exists. At 9:50 he'll walk into the board meeting as Thaddeus Barrett, founder and majority shareholder, wearing a suit that costs more than most people's cars. But first, bathrooms. 3rd floor. Tequila and regret. The week unfolds in split-screen reality. Morning, Thaddeus mops floors and fixes leaking faucets, listening to nurses gossip about Cassandra's whirlwind romance with Preston. Afternoon. Thaddeus sits in conference rooms reviewing acquisition targets and pharmaceutical contracts, his voice decisive in ways the morning janitor's never is. The cognitive dissonance should be jarring, but 5 years of practice has made the switching automatic, like bilingualism for the soul. Friday afternoon maintenance shift over. Thaddeus stands in the hidden bathroom changing from coveralls to charcoal Armani. The transformation takes 7 minutes shower to wash away the industrial cleaner smell. Fresh shirt crisp from the dry cleaner, tie knotted with the muscle memory of 10,000 board meetings. His reflection in the mirror shows the same man in both costumes, but the posture changes, shoulders back, chin up, the bearing of someone who built empires rather than serviced them. James is waiting in the underground garage with the Rolls-Royce engine purring like satisfied wealth. Good week, sir. Cassandra and Preston are getting serious. He's at her apartment every night now, the surveillance confirms it. James pulls into traffic with the smooth competence of someone who drove dignitaries through Baghdad during the war. Surveillance feels like a strong word. We're just monitoring public social media. She's posting photos of them together. Dinners at craft weekends and the Hamptons charity galas where Preston introduces her to surgical colleagues. She's building the life she wanted, just with someone else. And you're certain about protocol reckoning? Not yet. Let her have 6 months of happiness. Let her think she made the right choice. The grand opening is scheduled for 12 months from now. That's when truth gets its moment. The penthouse feels emptier on Friday nights, the city lights outside failing to fill the space where a family might be. Eva visits for dinner, Thai takeout from a place in Queens that doesn't know they're eating in a $30 million apartment, and they eat straight from containers while watching the Knicks lose to Miami. During halftime, Eva pulls out her tablet. Quarterly earnings are up 14%. The Portland acquisition closed yesterday, and the Phoenix hospital is ahead of schedule on the cancer center expansion. Good. What about Cassandra's application? The hiring committee meets Monday. She's likely to get it. Her restructuring proposal for nursing services is genuinely innovative. Even the outside consultants were impressed. Thaddeus nods, something like pride mixing with the darker emotions he won't name. She's good at what she does. That was never in question. Dad, you know this is insane, right? You could have just told her from the beginning. Saved yourself 5 years of mopping floors and eating humble pie. Then I would never have known if she loved me or the empire. Margaret's death taught me that lesson. Money doesn't just attract gold diggers. It attracts people who convince themselves they love you while really loving the lifestyle. I needed to know the difference. And now you know. Now I know. The game resumes and they watch in silence, but Thaddeus isn't really seeing the basketball. He's seeing Cassandra's face in the Whitmore dining room. The relief in her eyes when he signed the divorce papers without fighting, the way she leaned into Preston's touch, like finally finding safe harbor after years at sea with someone who couldn't provide the stability she craved. She wasn't cruel in that moment, just pragmatic, just choosing her future over their past. The following Monday, Cassandra gets the job. The announcement goes hospital-wide at 2 p.m., and Thaddeus is cleaning windows in the administrative wing when the email hits every inbox simultaneously. Congratulations ripple through the building in waves, text messages, phone calls, impromptu celebrations in break rooms where someone always seems to have champagne hidden for occasions like this. Preston appears with flowers, 24 roses that probably cost $300, presenting them in the main lobby where maximum people can witness his generosity. He spins Cassandra in a circle, her laughter echoing off marble floors, and kisses her in a way that makes the security guards look away with embarrassed smiles. Thaddeus watches from the second-floor balcony, squeegee in hand, invisible as furniture. Cassandra's joy is genuine. This is what she wanted, what she left him to pursue. The directorship of a major hospital expansion, a position that will define her career, transform her from a good nurse into a healthcare leader whose name appears in industry publications. She earned it. The selection committee voted unanimously, swayed by her vision and competence, rather than any connection she doesn't know she has to the funding source. That night, Eva calls with news. Preston Aldridge has $680,000 in debts, gambling mostly. Atlantic City, Vegas underground poker games in Manhattan. He's been borrowing from Cassandra, $50,000 here, $30,000 there, always with stories about investment opportunities or temporary cash flow problems. Does she know? No. She thinks she's helping her fiancé through a rough patch. He's very good at making it seem noble rather than parasitic. Keep monitoring. Don't interfere unless he poses actual danger. Dad, he's using her. People use each other in different ways. She used me for 5 years of emotional support while building her career, then traded up when someone shinier came along. At least Preston's honest about being a surgeon. She knew what she was getting. That's incredibly cynical. That's incredibly accurate. The weeks blur into months through a montage of contrasts that would make a film editor weep with joy. Morning, Thaddeus fixes a broken toilet on the 4th floor while nurses complain about budget cuts to supplies. Afternoon, Thaddeus approves $50 million in new equipment purchases, his signature on documents authorizing precisely the budget increases those same nurses want. Evening. Cassandra posts Instagram photos of her and Preston at restaurants Thaddeus owns through holding companies whose names she wouldn't recognize. One image stops him cold. Cassandra and Preston at Maria, an Italian place on Central Park South, where the pasta costs $50 a plate and the wine list reads like an auction catalog. They're laughing at something, Preston's arm around her shoulders, her hand on his chest in casual intimacy. The caption reads, "Finally with someone who dreams as big as I do." The hashtags include Blessed Upgrade and New Beginnings. The restaurant sits in a building Thaddeus purchased in 2019, part of a portfolio of Manhattan properties that threw off enough passive income to fund a small nation. He could ban Preston from the premises with a single phone call. He could buy the restaurant outright and turn it into a McDonald's out of spite. Instead, he double-taps the photo to like it, a gesture so petty and pointless that Eva laughs when he tells her about it. You liked her photo of being happy with another man. That's some advanced psychological warfare. Or masochism. I'm still not sure which. Month 3 brings Cassandra's engagement announcement, a carefully staged photo shoot in a botanical garden where Preston proposed among orchids that cost more to maintain than most people's monthly rent. The ring is impressive, 3-carat diamond emerald-cut platinum band that probably set Preston back $40,000 he didn't have. Thaddeus knows this because his investigators know this, because the ring was purchased on credit that Preston is already struggling to service. Lenora Whitmore shares the engagement photos 16 times across various social media platforms, each post a variation on the theme of daughter finally found worthy man. One caption particularly stings, "So proud of Cassandra for knowing when to cut losses and invest in a real partnership." Richmond adds his own commentary about Preston being exactly the kind of man their family values: educated, accomplished, ambitious. The irony sits heavy as wet concrete. Thaddeus built a $3 billion empire from a single hospital in Maine, created jobs for thousands, pioneered treatment protocols that saved lives across 3 states. Preston performs heart surgeries well and gambles badly. By any objective measure, Thaddeus is the more accomplished man. But he did it in coveralls while Preston does it in scrubs, and apparently the uniform matters more than the achievement. Month 4. Cassandra starts planning the wedding. She creates a Pinterest board that Eva discovers through means that are probably illegal but definitely effective. The theme is modern elegance with botanical touches. Ceremony planned for the Barrett Memorial grand opening because why not combine professional triumph with personal celebration? The venue will be the new wing's atrium glass ceiling, letting in natural light capacity for 400 guests. Cassandra has already designed invitations that read, "Join us as we celebrate new beginnings, both professional and personal." Eva brings this intelligence to dinner at the penthouse, her expression hovering between amusement and concern. She's planning her wedding at your hospital during your event in a space you're paying for. That's either cosmic irony or divine comedy. Both. Definitely both. You're going to attend, aren't you? Of course. I was invited, the announcement said. All staff welcome, including former staff and vendors. I technically qualify. As the janitor, or as yourself, as myself. The grand opening is when I stop hiding. The wedding is just unfortunate timing on her part. Dad, this will destroy her. Publicly. In front of 400 people. No. The truth will reveal her. There's a difference. I'm not orchestrating her humiliation. She's orchestrating her own celebration at an event she doesn't realize belongs to me. I'm just going to attend. Eva studies him with eyes too knowing for 28, looking for cracks in his certainty. You still care about her. I care about truth. I care about knowing that she had every chance to see me and chose not to. That matters. Month 5. Preston's debt situation worsens. He's borrowed $90,000 from Cassandra, now claiming a real estate investment in Brooklyn that will triple their money. The property doesn't exist. The money goes to bookies and casinos, feeding an addiction that Preston hides behind surgical masks and borrowed confidence. Eva wants to tell Cassandra hire a skywriter if necessary, anything to stop the train wreck in progress. Thaddeus refuses. She's an adult making adult choices. We don't interfere unless he poses physical danger. Financial danger isn't enough. She chose him. Part of that choice means accepting the consequences of who he actually is versus who she thinks he is. Same as I accepted the consequences of hiding who I was. That's some Old Testament logic. I'm an Old Testament kind of guy. Month 6 brings a shift in Cassandra's social media presence. The photos are still there, her and Preston at charity galas, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard celebrations with friends who all look vaguely similar in their expensive casual wear. But something in her smile seems forced now, the joy not quite reaching her eyes the way it did in earlier posts. She's lost weight, not dramatically, but noticeably, her face a little more angular in recent photos. Eva notices too, thinks she's having doubts or stress. Running a $200 million expansion while planning a wedding while dating a man who's secretly bleeding her dry financially, that's a lot of plates to keep spinning. You could end this any time. One conversation, one reveal, and Preston's gone. But would she thank me for it? Or resent me for taking away her choice? She left me because she thought she knew what she wanted. Let her find out if she was right. The hospital expansion progresses on schedule, Cassandra's management proving as competent as her application suggested. She implements systems that improve efficiency, hires staff with surgical precision, navigates vendor relationships with skill that impresses even the cynical board members who initially doubted her appointment. Watching her work, Thaddeus attends construction meetings in both his identities, janitor servicing the site in mornings, owner reviewing progress in afternoons. He feels pride war with regret. This is who she was meant to be. Not his wife maybe, but this a leader building something meaningful. She's good at it in ways that have nothing to do with him or Preston or anyone else. The expansion will succeed because of her competence, and that matters regardless of everything else. Month 7. The invitations go out. Heavy cardstock, letterpress printing, calligraphy, addressing that probably cost $5 per envelope. Thaddeus receives one at his maintenance locker, the hospital-wide invitation that includes all staff, even the janitors, nobody usually remembers. The wording invites him to celebrate the grand opening of the Barrett Memorial expansion and the marriage of Cassandra Whitmore to Dr. Preston Aldridge, as if hospital infrastructure and marital commitment occupy equal weight on the scale of human achievement. He RSVPs, yes, checking the box for attending alone, and returns the card anonymously. James wants to know what he's planning to wear. The Brioni tuxedo, the one I wore to the healthcare summit in Boston. That's an $18,000 tuxedo, sir, I'm aware. You're going to arrive in a Rolls-Royce wearing $18,000 and expect them to recognize you as the janitor. They ignored. I'm going to arrive in a helicopter wearing $18,000 and let them recognize me as whoever they're capable of seeing. The janitor was never the disguise, their blindness was the reveal. Month 8. Preston proposes a joint bank account. Cassandra hesitates, which Eva's surveillance picks up through text messages to friends. He's my fiancé, one text reads, but something feels rushed about combining finances before the wedding. Another friend responds with, trust your gut. If it feels wrong, don't do it. Cassandra doesn't do it, not yet, but Preston keeps pushing with the persistence of someone who needs access to her accounts, like a drowning man needs air. The gambling has accelerated. Preston is into bookies for amounts that would horrify Cassandra if she knew 200,000, then 300 interest compounding weekly at rates that would make loan sharks blush. He's liquidating everything he can, selling his car and claiming he's going green, pawning the Rolex, and saying he prefers a simpler lifestyle. Cassandra believes him because she wants to believe him, because the alternative means admitting she chose wrong. Month 9. The hospital wing nears completion. Cassandra works 16-hour days, her perfectionism driving her to inspect every detail personally. Thaddeus watches her review paint colors, furniture arrangements, equipment placements, and sees the woman he fell in love with, dedicated, thorough caring about outcomes rather than appearances. In another life, they could have built this together. In this life, she built it thinking he was just the guy who mopped the floors. One evening after her inspection rounds, she sits alone in what will be the new wing's atrium, surrounded by construction dust and the skeletons of future gardens. Thaddeus is emptying trash from the construction office when he sees her through the glass, head in her hands, shoulders shaking slightly. She's crying, and it stops him cold. He could go to her. He could break character, offer comfort, ask what's wrong. Instead, he watches her cry herself out in private, witnessing her vulnerability from a distance that measures more than physical space. When she finally stands and wipes her eyes and straightens her spine, he's already gone, disappeared into the maintenance corridors like the ghost he's been playing. Month 10. The tension between Cassandra and Preston becomes visible even in their public photos. They still smile for the camera, still attend events together, but there's something brittle in their body language now. Preston's hand on her back looks more like control than affection. Cassandra's smile has hardened into something that resembles determination more than joy. Eva discovers why Preston asked Cassandra for another $100,000, claiming a medical partnership opportunity. She finally said no, which triggered their first real fight. He called her controlling and unsupportive. She called him financially irresponsible. They're still together, still planning the wedding, but the foundation is cracking in ways that compound interest can't repair. Month 11, 3 weeks before the grand opening, Cassandra's mother, Lenora, visits the hospital to review wedding preparations. Thaddeus is cleaning windows in the atrium when she sweeps through with Cassandra in tow, criticizing flower arrangements and lighting plans with the authority of someone who believes her opinion is worth more than expertise. The orchids are wrong, too common. We need something exotic, birds of paradise, maybe anthurium. And these chairs are pedestrian. Can we upgrade to Chiavari chairs, gold not silver? Mom, the budget is already stretched. Preston and I agreed to keep costs reasonable. Lenora's laugh could etch glass. Reasonable, darling. This is the wedding that announces you've arrived. Don't be cheap now. I'm not being cheap, I'm being practical. The hospital expansion is my priority. The wedding is just one day. Just one day. This is the day you erase the mistake of your first marriage. The day everyone sees you made the right choice. Don't you dare settle for pedestrian. Cassandra's face goes carefully blank, the expression of someone absorbing criticism they've heard too many times to argue against. She nods and makes notes about upgraded chairs while Thaddeus squeegees windows 15 feet away, invisible as air. Month 12 arrives with the inexorable weight of destiny dressed in formal wear. The grand opening is scheduled for Friday evening, black tie, 400 guests including hospital board members, staff donors, press, and political figures who show up when cameras are present. Cassandra has been living at the hospital for the past week, personally overseeing final preparations while her wedding planner handles ceremony details. Thursday night, 24 hours before truth gets its moment. Thaddeus sits in his penthouse with a glass of Macallan and a clarity that feels like inevitability. Eva joins him, her own anxiety manifesting as constant motion, pacing, checking her phone, adjusting picture frames that don't need adjusting. Last chance to back out. You could just not go. Let them have their moment. And let her spend the rest of her life not knowing what she dismissed know. She deserves to know. They all do. You're really going to arrive by helicopter. James has the flight plan filed. We'll land at 7 p.m., right as the event hits full swing. The helipad is visible from the atrium through that glass ceiling Cassandra spent 3 weeks obsessing over. And you're going to just walk in. I'm going to attend an event at my hospital celebrating an expansion I funded. Yes, wearing $18,000. Wearing the appropriate attire for someone of my position attending a formal event. The cost is incidental. Eva stops pacing and faces him directly. Dad, I love you, but you're about to commit an act of emotional violence that will haunt that woman for the rest of her life. Are you sure this is justice and not just revenge wearing better clothes? The question deserves consideration. So Thaddeus considers it. He sips whiskey that tastes like Scotland, and smoke, and thinks about 5 years of being invisible. 5 years of eating contempt for breakfast, and silence for dinner. He thinks about Cassandra's relief when he signed divorce papers without fighting her joy, when Preston proposed her achievement in building something genuinely worthwhile despite her personal failures. I'm sure that truth matters more than comfort. I'm sure that she chose status over substance, appearance over integrity, and convenience over character. I'm sure that those choices should have consequences beyond just losing someone she never really valued anyway. Whether that's justice or revenge probably depends on which side of the revelation you're standing on. And Preston gets exactly what he deserves, public exposure as a fraud using her for money. He's done worse to her than I'm about to do. I'm just turning on the lights. Eva nods slowly, accepting if not agreeing. Okay. Then I guess we're really doing this. We're really doing this. Friday morning dawns clear in cold November, asserting its authority over autumn's last pretensions. Thaddeus doesn't go to the hospital for his final maintenance shift. Instead, he spends the day in careful preparation, haircut at a barber who charges $300 for the privileged manicure because details matter, a 2-hour session with his tailor, making microscopic adjustments to a tuxedo that already fits perfectly. James coordinates with the helicopter pilot, Eva reviews contingency plans for various outcomes, and somewhere across town Cassandra is probably managing her own preparations while still believing she knows how this evening ends. At 6 p.m., Thaddeus stands before his bedroom mirror in full formal wear. The tuxedo is midnight blue rather than black, custom-made in Milan with hand-stitching that will outlast him. The shirt is bespoke cotton so fine it's almost translucent. The bow tie is silk that cost more than Preston's monthly salary. The watch is Patek Philippe vintage 1960s, worth approximately the same as Cassandra's annual salary. The shoes are John Lobb, broken in over 2 years of occasional wear until they fit like gloves made of leather. He looks like exactly what he is, a man who built empires and wears them lightly. Eva appears in the doorway wearing a champagne-colored gown that makes her look less like his EVP and more like the daughter he's proud of, regardless of business acumen. You ready? As I'll ever be. The helicopter is waiting on the roof, rotors already spinning, James at the controls because, of course, James has a pilot's license along with all his other improbable skills. The flight from Manhattan to Hartford takes 23 minutes, the city lights giving way to suburban darkness. Then the concentrated glow of the hospital complex rising like a beacon in the Connecticut night. Below them, visible through the helicopter's floor-to-ceiling windows, the Barrett Memorial expansion glows like a crystalline jewel. The glass atrium is lit from within, revealing the party already in full swing, black-tie guests milling around, string quartet playing something elegant, champagne flowing like water that costs $30 a glass. Thaddeus can see Cassandra in a white gown, Preston in his tuxedo, both of them circulating among guests who congratulate them on achievements they only partially understand. James glances back from the pilot seat. "Sir, we're beginning descent." Still committed. Thaddeus watches the party below. Watches. Cassandra laughs at something a board member says. Watches. Preston grip her waist with possessive certainty. He thinks about walking away, letting her have this moment, this night, this belief that she made all the right choices. Then he remembers 5 years of being invisible, and the decision becomes easy. Committed. Take us down. The helicopter descends through darkness toward light, its navigation strobes painting red streaks across the glass ceiling that Cassandra spent 3 weeks perfecting. The rotor wash sends ripples across champagne and crystal flutes, causes women to clutch at elaborate updos, draws every eye upward toward the machine settling onto the rooftop helipad like a god arriving fashionably late to mortal celebrations. Inside the atrium, the string quartet falters mid-Vivaldi. Conversation dies in concentric circles spreading outward from whoever noticed first. 400 faces turn skyward watching through glass as the helicopter's door opens and a man emerges, tall, silver-haired, moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who owns the ground beneath everyone's feet. Cassandra stands frozen near the centerpiece ice sculpture, her white gown catching light like captured snow. Her champagne glass tilts dangerously golden liquid threatening to spill across silk that cost $8,000. Preston's hand tightens on her waist, proprietary and suddenly uncertain, his surgical confidence evaporating as he follows her gaze upward. Who arrives by helicopter to a hospital opening? The question ripples through the crowd in whispers that build like static electricity before lightning. Board members straighten unconsciously, adjusting ties and smoothing jackets in the instinctive preening that happens when power enters a room. Samuel Brenner, the CEO who thought he ran this hospital, goes pale as old paper, recognition dawning across his features like unwelcome sunrise. Thaddeus Barrett descends the internal stairs from the helipad, each footfall deliberate and unhurried. The midnight blue tuxedo catches ambient light, hand-stitching visible in the way fabric moves across his shoulders. His bow tie is perfectly centered, shoes polished to mirrors the Patek Philippe on his wrist, older than most people at this party. He looks like old money that never needed to announce itself because everyone with real power already knew. Eva follows 3 steps behind, champagne gown and carefully neutral expression, playing her role as executive vice president who just happens to be his daughter. James remains with the helicopter engine idling, ready for whatever exit strategy becomes necessary. The crowd parts as Thaddeus enters the atrium proper. People stepping back without conscious decision, creating a corridor that leads directly toward where Cassandra stands with Preston, both of them rooted like trees that just realized the forest is burning. Hospital staff cluster in confused knots, maintenance workers in rented tuxedos, standing next to surgeons in designer wear, everyone trying to reconcile the man descending the stairs with the janitor who serviced their bathrooms. Marcus Chen. 30 years maintenance, 3 years working alongside Thaddeus, stares with his mouth actually hanging open. Beer bottle forgotten in his hand. That's Thad. That's our Thad. What the hell is happening? The hospital's chief operating officer reaches Thaddeus first, moving with the desperate energy of someone trying to control a situation already beyond containment. Mr. Barrett, we weren't expecting you to attend personally. Welcome to. Thaddeus raises one hand slightly, the gesture polite but absolute. His eyes haven't left Cassandra's face, watching her brain process information it can't quite accept. I wouldn't miss this evening. After all, I've been looking forward to it for quite some time. His voice carries in the sudden silence that particular acoustical phenomenon where 400 people collectively hold their breath. It's the same voice that chaired board meetings for 20 years, commanded rooms full of Harvard MBAs and Yale lawyers, built empires through calm certainty rather than loud dominance. But it's also the voice that said goodnight to Cassandra for 5 years, the voice she dismissed as belonging to someone with no ambition, no future, no worth beyond his ability to mop floors and stay quiet. A woman near the bar. Jennifer. Something works in hospital administration, pulls out her phone with trembling fingers. Her screen glows as she types into Google, and Thaddeus can track the moment when search results load by the way her face transforms from confusion to shock to something approaching horror. Oh my God, that's Thaddeus Barrett. Thaddeus Barrett. He founded this hospital system. He owns Jesus Christ. He owns everything. The word spread like contagion through a population with no immunity. Phones emerge from pockets and clutch purses, screens lighting up across the atrium as 400 people simultaneously Google the same name. The results bloom across devices in real-time. Forbes profiles, estimating net worth at $3.4 billion. Wall Street Journal articles about the mysterious healthcare mogul who built an empire while maintaining almost complete anonymity. Wikipedia entries detailing the rise of Barrett Health Systems from a single main hospital to a regional powerhouse spanning 3 states. Preston's face cycles through expressions like someone flipping channels: confusion, recognition, denial, panic, the final landing place somewhere between trapped animal and cardiac patient, realizing the chest pain is serious. His hand drops from Cassandra's waist as if her skin suddenly burns, and he takes one involuntary step backward, then another, distancing himself from the blast radius of revelation. Cassandra remains frozen champagne glass, now tilted at 45 degrees, liquid finally spilling across her knuckles in slow motion. Her mouth opens, but no sound emerges. Vocal cords apparently as shocked as her brain. The carefully constructed narrative of her life: poor choice, followed by smart correction, trading up from janitor to surgeon, finally finding a man worthy of her ambition, disintegrates like sugar sculpture in rain. Lenora Whitmore stands 10 feet away, peacock blue gown and diamond necklace that probably cost $60,000. Her phone screen bright with search results. Her face has gone from surgically maintained confidence to something approaching existential crisis, the lines that Botox usually erases suddenly visible as her expression collapses. No, that's not possible. He's a janitor. He's nobody. The chief financial officer, a woman named Patricia Vaughn, who's worked with Thaddeus for 15 years and knows exactly who signs her paychecks, steps forward with the careful diplomacy of someone navigating a minefield in high heels. Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Barrett is the founder and majority shareholder of Barrett Health Systems. He's been the primary funding source for this expansion. The $200 million investment that made all this possible came from his personal accounts. The information lands like artillery among the guests. Richmond Whitmore actually staggers, gripping his wife Margaret's arm for support, his face cycling through calculations about every insult he hurled at family dinners, every mocking laugh, every dismissive gesture aimed at the man who could buy his entire life with pocket change. Cassandra's champagne glass hits the floor with a crystalline crash that echoes off glass walls. The sound breaks whatever spell was holding her immobile, and she moves toward Thaddeus with stumbling steps, her white gown trailing through the spreading puddle of champagne and broken crystal. Thad. I don't understand. You said you were maintenance. You never said I never lied. I worked maintenance. I mopped floors, fixed leaking toilets, serviced elevators. Every statement I made about my job was accurate. You made assumptions about what that meant. His voice remains gentle, almost kind, which somehow makes the words cut deeper than accusation would. Cassandra stops 3 feet away, close enough to touch, but suddenly aware that the distance between them measures more than physical space. Behind her, Preston has gone full retreat mode, edging toward the exit with the desperate energy of someone who just realized he's been playing poker against a card counter. You let me divorce you. You let me think you were broke, that you had nothing. You signed papers giving you nothing when you could have. Could have what? Fought for a share of assets you didn't know existed. Demanded alimony from accounts you couldn't prove. You offered me $75,000 like I was a charity case. I took nothing because I didn't need anything from you except honesty. You couldn't give me that. The crowd has formed a loose circle now, everyone pretending they're not listening while hanging on every word. Phones record surreptitiously social media posts already composing themselves in real time. Somewhere a photographer hired for the wedding starts earning her fee, camera clicking in rapid succession as she captures the dissolution of Cassandra's carefully constructed narrative. Preston makes it almost to the exit before Eva materializes in his path, champagne gown and smile that doesn't reach her eyes. Dr. Aldridge leaving so soon. And here I thought you'd want to discuss those investment opportunities you've been pitching to Cassandra. The Brooklyn real estate deal, was it? Or perhaps we should talk about the $680,000 you owe to various bookies between here and Atlantic City. The words drop into silence like stones into still water. Preston's face achieves a shade of pale that suggests medical emergency, his mouth working soundlessly while his brain apparently short-circuits. Cassandra spins toward him, her expression shifting from shock to the dawning horror of someone who just realized she's been played. Preston, what is she talking about? He tries to speak, but manages only strangled sounds, his lawyer instincts apparently recognizing that anything he says will be used against him in the court of public opinion, currently recording every moment. Eva produces a folder from somewhere, her clutch purse apparently designed for both elegance and evidence storage, and offers it to Cassandra with the cool professionalism of someone delivering quarterly earnings reports. Financial records for the past 8 months. The money you gave him, $90,000 in total, didn't go to investments. It went to offshore gambling sites, Atlantic City casinos and bookies who've been threatening collection action. The real estate opportunity doesn't exist. Neither does the medical partnership. You were funding his addiction while thinking you were building your future. Cassandra takes the folder with shaking hands, her perfectly manicured nails leaving small indentations in the cardstock. She doesn't open it immediately, just holds it like evidence of her own poor judgment, the weight of revelation literally in her hands. Preston finds his voice finally reaching for her arm with desperate familiarity. Cass, baby, I can explain. This is all a misunderstanding. These numbers are out of context. She pulls away from his touch like he's contagious. The folder clutched against her chest. Don't. Just don't. The rejection in her voice is absolute, the same tone she used when divorcing Thaddeus, but now aimed at the man she thought was her upgrade. Preston's face hardens, that particular masculine anger that emerges when shame meets public humiliation in front of witnesses. This is your fault, he wheels on Thaddeus, jabbing one finger in accusation. You set this up. You let me think she was available. Let me get involved just so you could destroy us both. What kind of psychopath plays games like this? Thaddeus's expression doesn't change, that same calm certainty that built billion-dollar hospitals and weathered economic recessions without panic. I played no games, Dr. Aldridge. I simply existed in truth, while you and Cassandra built fantasies about who I was and what I could provide. You chose to pursue a woman based on the career she'd built at a hospital I own. You chose to gamble money she earned in positions I approved. You chose deception as your strategy. I just allowed consequences to arrive on their own schedule. The logic is unassailable and therefore enraging. Preston lunges forward, fist actually cocking back in some primal attempt to punch through humiliation with violence. He makes it approximately 6 inches before James appears from nowhere. Apparently the helicopter can fly itself, or Eva has backup security and intercepts the movement with the casual efficiency of someone who neutralized actual threats in war zones. I wouldn't recommend that, sir. Assault charges would complicate your already difficult evening. Preston subsides, breathing hard, trapped between rage and self-preservation. Security guards materialize from the edges of the crowd, hospital personnel who suddenly remember their ultimate employer just arrived, and maybe they should look professional. They escort Preston toward the exit with firm hands on his elbows, his departure tracked by 400 pairs of eyes and at least 60 recording phones. The silence after he leaves feels heavier than the silence before, weighted with unasked questions and social calculations happening in real time. Lenora pushes through the crowd with the determination of someone who's survived worse embarrassments through sheer refusal to acknowledge reality. This is insane. Cassandra, don't listen to these people. They're trying to sabotage your wedding, your career. This man, she gestures at Thaddeus without looking directly at him, deceived you, lied by omission, let you make decisions based on incomplete information. Thaddeus turns his attention to his former mother-in-law for the first time since entering his gaze measuring and finding her wanting. Mrs. Whitmore. I wore coveralls and mopped floors. I lived in a modest apartment and drove an old truck. Every visible fact about my life was accurate. Your daughter judged me by those facts and found me insufficient. You encourage that judgment because you measure people by their job titles and bank balances rather than their character. The only deception here was your collective assumption that surface appearance equals essential worth. But you could have told her. You let her divorce you thinking you were poor. I let her divorce me knowing exactly who I was, someone content mopping floors, someone who didn't need to prove his worth through expensive displays, someone who valued partnership over status. She left because I wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't successful enough, wasn't impressive enough. The irony that I was more successful than she could imagine is simply evidence that she never actually saw me at all. The words hang in the air like indictment, each syllable carefully chosen and devastating in its accuracy. Cassandra makes a sound somewhere between laugh and sob, the folder still pressed against her chest like armor that arrived too late. A reporter from the Hartford Courant, somehow credentials always get these people into events, pushes forward with recorder extended and questions already forming. Mr. Barrett, is it true you've been working as a janitor at your own hospital for 5 years? Can you comment on why you maintained that disguise? Thaddeus considers the question, aware that his answer will be quoted in morning editions and probably trending on social media within the hour. It wasn't a disguise, it was a test. My first wife died under the pressure of the lifestyle our wealth created. She chased status until it killed her. I swore I'd never remarry unless I found someone who could love me without the distraction of money. Cassandra failed that test. Not because she's a bad person, but because she values achievement and appearance more than character and commitment. The reporter scribbles frantically, probably already composing the headline, "Billionaire posed as janitor to test ex-wife's values." Cassandra's face cycles through emotions too complex for simple naming. Humiliation, anger, regret, something that might be grief for a future that just evaporated like champagne puddles under event lighting. Samuel Brenner approaches with the desperate energy of a CEO who just realized his authority is entirely ceremonial. Mr. Barrett, perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere more private. Allow the guests to enjoy the evening. Thaddeus shakes his head slightly. No, Sam, this needed to be public. Cassandra planned her wedding to coincide with my hospital opening specifically so 400 witnesses could validate her choices. It's only fitting that 400 witnesses also see the truth. Privacy would be kindness I'm not certain anyone here has earned. The statement lands with surgical precision, cutting through any remaining illusions about his motivations. This isn't revenge exactly, but it's not forgiveness either. It's accountability, delivered with the same calm certainty he brings to every business decision, measured, proportional, final. Cassandra finally finds her voice, though it emerges ragged and small. So this whole evening, the expansion, the funding, giving me the director position, all of it was just to set up this moment, to humiliate me in front of everyone I know. No. The expansion is real and necessary, funded, because this community needs better health care regardless of our personal history. Your position was earned through legitimate competition. I specifically instructed the selection committee to evaluate candidates without bias. You were the best choice for the job, which is why you got it. This moment isn't manufactured revenge. It's just the inevitable collision between your celebration and my existence. Then why not just let us have this evening? Because you were celebrating in my house, Cassandra. Literally. You planned your wedding in a building I own, funded by money I provided during an event honoring work I commissioned. You invited me. The invitation said all staff welcome, including former staff. I'm simply accepting that invitation as myself, rather than as the janitor you never really saw. The logic is airtight and therefore crushing. Cassandra's knees actually buckle slightly, caught by Richmond, who's appeared at her side, looking like he aged a decade in the past 20 minutes. He helps her to a chair that someone materializes from the wedding setup, white cushion and gold frame, irony piled upon irony. Lenora stands abandoned, her phone still glowing with search results that confirm her worst nightmare. She dismissed a billionaire as unworthy of her daughter while encouraging an affair with a gambling addict. Her social media presence, carefully curated over years to project success and superiority, is already being shredded in real time as people who know her start connecting the dots about whose wedding this was supposed to be. The party has fractured into distinct groups now. Hospital staff clustering near the bar, in shocked discussion board members hovering near Thaddeus like planets around a sun. They just discovered wedding guests trapped between social obligation and desperate desire to flee, and journalists circling the whole thing like sharks scenting blood in crystal-clear water. Eva appears at Thaddeus's elbow, champagne flute in hand, though she hasn't sipped from it. "Dad, we should consider departure. You've made your point. Have I? Or have I just revealed a truth that people are already beginning to rationalize away?" He's right to be skeptical. Already he can see the narrative forming in real-time whispered conversations, suggesting that Cassandra couldn't have known that Thaddeus was cruel to hide his identity, that this entire situation reflects poorly on him rather than her. The instinct to protect social hierarchies runs deep. Easier to blame the billionaire for games than to examine the values that made those games necessary. Patricia Vaughn, the CFO, provides unwitting evidence by approaching with calculated sympathy. "Mr. Barrett, while I understand your position, don't you think you bear some responsibility for the deception? Expecting Mrs. Whitmore to intuit your true circumstances seems unreasonable. I expected nothing from her except the character to value people beyond their paychecks. She failed that basic test of human decency. The fact that you're already making excuses for her proves that even now, even with all evidence visible, people would rather question my methods than her values." The CFO flushes, but persists. "With respect, sir, you actively misled. I mopped floors and fixed toilets. Which part of that was misleading? The part where I did honest work, or the part where people assumed honest work means lack of worth?" The exchange is drawing attention, other conversations pausing to listen. Thaddeus can feel the evening shifting, his moment of revelation already being processed through social filters that prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. Cassandra sits in her white gown looking like a bride at a funeral, mascara finally giving up and tracking down her cheeks in dark rivulets that ruin her carefully applied contouring. Marcus Chen, 3-decade maintenance veteran who shared breakroom coffee with Thaddeus for 5 years, approaches with the tentative energy of someone navigating completely unfamiliar social territory. His rented tuxedo doesn't fit quite right, probably the same one he wears to his daughter's school events, and his hands shake slightly as he extends one toward Thaddeus. "Mr. Barrett, I just wanted to say, man, I don't even know what to say. You mopped floors beside me. You shared your lunch. You fixed that elevator on 12 when it broke on Christmas Eve so the night shift could get home. You weren't pretending to be one of us. You were one of us." The observation lands differently than anything else spoken tonight, cutting through rhetoric and calculation to something uncomfortably genuine. Thaddeus takes Marcus's hand, the grip firm and mutual, two men who know what calluses mean, regardless of bank balances. "I never pretended, Marcus. That work mattered. The people mattered. I learned more about this hospital in 5 years mopping floors than I did in 20 years attending board meetings. You taught me that." Tears actually well in Marcus's eyes, and he nods several times before withdrawing, apparently unable to trust his voice for further speech. The moment creates ripples, other maintenance staff approaching, tentatively emboldened by Marcus's example, wanting to touch the miracle of discovering their janitor owned the building. But Cassandra remains the gravitational center of the evening's drama, and eventually Thaddeus has to face her again. She's composed herself, somewhat wiped away mascara streaks, and straightened her spine, though her eyes hold the shell-shocked expression of someone whose entire worldview just exploded. "What happens now?" Her voice is steady, barely focusing on logistics because emotion is too overwhelming to process. "Now you oversee the expansion you were hired to manage. Your position wasn't charity or setup, you earned it legitimately. Unless you choose to resign, the job is still yours. And us. There is no us, Cassandra. There hasn't been for 12 months. You divorced me, remember? The papers are filed, the settlement executed, the marriage legally dissolved. The only thing that's changed is you now know what you gave up. Whether that knowledge helps or haunts you is something you'll have to determine for yourself. The finality in his voice is absolute, the door closing with the quiet certainty of someone who already grieved this relationship and moved past it. Cassandra nods slowly, accepting the boundary, though her hands twist together in her lap with the unconscious distress of someone who just realized she made a catastrophic calculation error. Lenora tries one final offensive, her voice pitched to carry across the atrium. "You're a cruel man, Mr. Barrett. You let my daughter believe you were poor, let her make decisions based on false information, and now you stand here judging her for those choices. What kind of person plays those games?" Thaddeus turns to face her fully, his expression carved from the same stone that builds mountains. "The same kind of person who spends 5 years listening to you explain why I wasn't good enough for your daughter, Mrs. Whitmore. The same kind who endured dinner after dinner being told I had no ambition, no future, no worth beyond my ability to disappear quietly. You wanted me gone. You got exactly what you asked for. The only surprise is discovering that the poor janitor you dismissed could buy your estate with the interest earned during this conversation. The math isn't hyperbole. Thaddeus's wealth generates approximately $40,000 per hour in passive returns, more than enough to purchase the Whitmore property several times over. Lenora's face achieves new frontiers in pallor, the reality of her miscalculation finally penetrating the armor of assumed superiority. Richmond pulls his mother back, whispering urgently in her ear, probably warning her that digging deeper just excavates more humiliation. The crowd has thinned slightly, some guests making quiet exits while others remain glued to the drama like they're watching a play nobody knew was being performed. Eva touches Thaddeus's elbow again, more insistent this time. "Dad," James signaled that weather is changing. "If we're leaving tonight, it should be soon." He nods, acknowledging wisdom while not quite committing to follow it. There's one more conversation necessary, one more truth to deliver before this evening can achieve completion. "Cassandra, stand up." She does automatically, the command in his voice triggering instincts trained by 5 years of marriage. They stand facing each other 3 feet apart, white gown and midnight blue tuxedo, the visual echo of a wedding that ended long before either of them admitted it. "I loved you. When I met you, when I married you, when I mopped these floors while you built your career, I loved you. Not for what you could provide or how you made me look, but for who I believed you were. That love was real even if it was built on foundations you couldn't see because you never looked past the coveralls." Cassandra's composure finally shatters completely, sobs breaking through in great heaving gasps that shake her whole frame. The sound echoes off glass walls, raw and ugly and honest in ways the evening's earlier exchanges weren't. "I wanted you to love me the same way for who I am, rather than what I have. You failed that test every single day we were married. Not maliciously, not even consciously, but completely. You chose Preston because he had the right title, the right credentials, the right surface presentation. You never stopped to examine whether he had the right character. That failure is yours to own, not mine to forgive. Then what? What do you want from me? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I want you to live with your choices and learn from them. I want you to wake up every morning knowing you had real love and dismissed it as insufficient. I want you to build this expansion into something magnificent and wonder occasionally what we could have created together if you'd valued partnership over status. Some lessons can only be learned by living with their consequences." The statement lands with finality, no room for negotiation or appeal. Cassandra stands there taking it, armor gone, pride shattered, left with nothing but the raw awareness of opportunities destroyed through shallow judgment. Thaddeus turns toward the exit, Eva falling into step beside him, James waiting somewhere above with engines already warming. People step aside as he walks toward the stairs leading to the helipad, the movement automatic creating a path for his departure. "Wait." Cassandra's voice stops him at the base of the stairs. He doesn't turn around, just pauses, granting her the minimal respect of acknowledgement. "I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I'm genuinely sorry." The apology is sincere. He can hear that much raw, with the kind of honesty that only comes when all pretense is stripped away. He considers various responses: acceptance, rejection, further cruelty, measured wisdom. What emerges is simpler and truer than anything else spoken tonight. I know you are. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you demolished. It just acknowledges the rubble. The rest is up to you. Then he climbs the stairs without looking back, each step taking him higher while Cassandra remains below white gown and broken certainty, surrounded by witnesses to her own spectacular misjudgment. The helicopter lifts off into November darkness, the party below shrinking to toy-scale tiny figures in formal wear, one woman in white standing absolutely still, while others mill around her like water flowing around stone. The lights of the hospital complex fade as James banks toward Manhattan, leaving Hartford behind in ways both literal and metaphorical. Eva breaks the silence first, her voice gentle in the helicopter's muted interior. How do you feel Thaddeus considers the question, examining his internal landscape for satisfaction or regret or any of the emotions that should accompany accomplished justice? What he finds instead is a peculiar flatness, completion without triumph, the mathematical certainty of an equation balanced but not celebrated. Sad. Not because of what I did tonight, but because it had to be done at all. Because Cassandra couldn't see past coveralls to character, couldn't value work beyond its salary, couldn't love a person instead of a presentation. That's what makes this sad, not the revelation, but what it revealed about her. That's very mature and philosophical. Also possibly the most depressing thing you've said all year. Welcome to truth without sugarcoating. It tastes like this, bitter, necessary, and ultimately clarifying. The Manhattan skyline rises ahead, lights competing with stars. They've permanently eclipsed the city where Thaddeus built his empire from nothing but vision and relentless competence. The penthouse is waiting 60 floors above street level, quiet and expensive, ready to receive him back into the comfortable isolation of wealth that needs no witnesses. They land on the building's private helipad, the Rolls-Royce already waiting in the underground garage for whenever Thaddeus needs ground transportation. Eva walks with him to the elevator, her heels clicking on concrete. Neither of them speaking because sometimes silence communicates more than words can carry. Inside the penthouse, Thaddeus removes his tuxedo jacket and bow tie, the midnight blue fabric, a costume now discarded after the performance ends. He pours 2 fingers of Macallan 25 and stands at the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city where 8 million people are living their lives in complete ignorance of the dramas playing out in penthouses above their pay grade. Eva appears beside him with club soda, her own choice never varying despite the fully stocked bar. You really gave her the job on merit completely. The selection committee voted unanimously before I said a word. She earned that position through her own competence. Her talent at healthcare administration was never in question. Her talent at judging character, on the other hand, proved catastrophically insufficient. And now she either rises to the challenge or resigns in shame. Either outcome is hers to own. I won't interfere beyond ensuring the expansion succeeds regardless of who manages it. They stand in comfortable silence, father and daughter. Both of them, products of wealth so vast it becomes abstract. Through the window, Thaddeus can see the building where Barrett Health Empire's corporate headquarters occupy 15 floors of prime Manhattan real estate. He built that company from nothing, a single community hospital in Maine that he bought with money borrowed against his father's lobster boat back when he was 25 and too ambitious to recognize impossible odds. You think she'll stay? Eva asks, her business mind already calculating scenarios and outcomes. Thaddeus takes a slow sip of whiskey that costs more per ounce than most hourly wages. She'll stay. Cassandra isn't a coward, whatever else she might be. She'll transform her humiliation into determination. Prove to everyone, herself most of all, that she deserves that position independent of any connection to me. In 5 years, she'll probably be one of the best hospital administrators in the Northeast. That was always her potential. And you're okay with that? Her succeeding at your hospital after everything? Why wouldn't I be? Her success doesn't diminish me. Her failure wouldn't validate me. Those are separate accounts that don't balance against each other. I want the expansion to succeed because people need good health care. If Cassandra provides that, everyone benefits. My personal feelings are irrelevant to patient outcomes. Eva shakes her head with the particular exasperation of someone who loves her father despite his occasionally infuriating principles. Most people would want revenge. You want competent hospital administration. I got my revelation tonight. That's sufficient. Revenge would just be wasteful repetition of a point already made. Besides, watching her succeed while knowing what she lost might be the cruelest outcome of all. Every achievement will remind her of the partnership she destroyed. That's not revenge, that's just mathematics. You're a strange man, Dad. I'm aware. They finish their drinks in silence, then Eva hugs him goodnight and leaves for her own apartment in the East Village, the place she maintains, despite Thaddeus offering her several floors in this building. She values independence the way he values honesty as a principle worth some inconvenience to maintain. Alone now, Thaddeus walks through rooms designed for entertaining but rarely used for that purpose. The penthouse is beautiful in the way museums are beautiful, curated, expensive, somewhat sterile in its perfection. Margaret decorated it before she died, back when they hosted charity galas and business dinners, back before the pressure of maintaining social standing killed her as surely as any disease. That's why the test mattered. That's why 5 years in coveralls was necessary rather than cruel. He needed to know if someone could love him without the distraction of wealth, could value character over credentials, could see the man instead of the portfolio. Cassandra failed comprehensively, but at least now he knows. At least now he's not wondering if the woman beside him loves him or loves what he provides. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. Thaddeus lies in his king-sized bed. Margaret chose the mattress. Egyptian cotton sheets, all of it, and stares at the ceiling while his brain replays the evening in unwanted detail. Cassandra's face when recognition hit. Preston's panic when exposure arrived. Lenora's horror at her own miscalculation. Marcus's tears at discovering nobility in unexpected places. Some lessons can only be learned by living with their consequences. The words he spoke to Cassandra echo in the darkness, true for her, but also true for him. He learned that wealth reveals character rather than corrupting it. He learned that 5 years of invisibility taught him more about human nature than 20 years of visibility ever could. He learned that love without respect is just performance art, destined for tragic finale. And he learned finally that he'd rather be alone with his integrity than partnered with someone who valued him for the wrong reasons. The knowledge sits heavy as winter snow, cold and clarifying, and somehow final. Morning comes with gray November light filtering through windows that face east toward the rising sun. Thaddeus wakes at 6 out of habit, the internal clock trained by years of early hospital shifts still governing his body, despite no longer needing to punch a time card. He makes coffee in the kitchen that cost more than most people's annual salary, the machine Italian, and complicated producing espresso that tastes exactly like the $3 bodega version, but costs exponentially more to create. His phone shows 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, and an email inbox so full it stopped counting at 999. The world has discovered last night's revelation. Social media doing what social media does best. Amplifying drama, speculating wildly, turning human complexity into digestible narrative. He ignores all of it and drinks his coffee black while reading the Financial Times, checking how Asian markets performed overnight, whether European exchanges are responding to yesterday's Fed announcement. The world continues turning regardless of personal drama. That's oddly comforting. Eva arrives at 8 with bagels and the Hartford Courant, its front page dominated by a photo of Thaddeus descending from the helicopter while Cassandra stares upward in frozen shock. The headline reads, "Billionaire's 5-year test, Hartford healthcare mogul reveals identity after ex-wife's wedding plans." The article is surprisingly fair, presenting facts without excessive editorializing, including quotes from Marcus about Thaddeus's genuine work ethic and from board members confirming Cassandra's legitimate qualifications. There's speculation about motivations and ethics, but nothing libelous or wildly inaccurate. Could be worse, Eva observes, spreading cream cheese on a bagel with the precision of someone who learned portion control at Harvard Business School. Could be better. They're already trying to make it a story about me instead of about what her choices revealed. That's human nature. Easier to judge the billionaire for his methods than examine why those methods were necessary. Thaddeus nods, accepting wisdom he already knew but needed hearing anyway. The rest of the morning passes in routine business phone calls with hospital administrators, emails about expansion timelines, a video conference with the Boston facility about their new oncology wing. The empire continues growing, expanding, succeeding in ways completely independent of last night's personal drama. At noon, his phone rings with a number he doesn't recognize, but area code he does: Hartford. He considers letting it go to voicemail, then curiosity wins and he answers. "Mr. Barrett, this is Cassandra." Her voice sounds smaller than he remembers, hollowed out by the past 12 hours. He says nothing, just waits, granting her the space to fill silence however she needs. "I'm calling to let you know I'm staying. I'm going to finish this expansion and prove that I earned this position. Not because of you, not despite you, just because I'm capable of doing the work. I never doubted your capability. That was never the issue. I know. The issue was whether I could see yours. And I couldn't. I didn't. I'm sorry for that, and I'm going to have to live with it, but I'm not going to let my personal failures destroy professional opportunities. This community deserves good health care regardless of our history." The statement is dignified and appropriate, exactly what he'd hoped she'd say, but wasn't certain she could manage. "Agreed. The expansion moves forward on schedule. Your work thus far has been exemplary. Please continue at that standard." There's a pause, breathing on the line, then, "Thank you for believing in my competence even when I didn't believe in your character." The honesty in her voice is almost painful to hear. Thaddeus closes his eyes, remembering the woman he married, younger, more idealistic, before ambition calcified into the only value system she recognized. "We both learned something, Cassandra. That has to be enough." She disconnects without goodbye, the line going dead with a soft click that sounds like doors closing everywhere. Thaddeus sets down his phone and returns to reviewing architectural plans for the Portland acquisition. The work continuing because work always continues regardless of who loves whom or who failed which test. Eva appears in his office doorway an hour later, tablet in hand and expression carefully neutral. Cassandra just issued a statement to hospital staff. She's staying on, committed to completing the expansion, and asked for privacy to focus on work rather than personal matters. Very professional. Good. She's handling it correctly. Are you handling it correctly? The question stops him mid-signature on a contract worth $40 million. He sets down his pen and looks at his daughter, auburn hair and green eyes, 28 years old and wiser than he was at 40. "I don't know. Ask me in 5 years when we see who she becomes after learning this lesson." Fair enough. Eva leaves and Thaddeus returns to his contract, his empire, his carefully constructed life that has room for everything except the one thing he tested Cassandra to provide: partnership built on who he is rather than what he has. Some lessons can only be learned by living with their consequences. The words echo again, true in ways that cut both directions. Cassandra will live with knowing she dismissed real love for surface status, and Thaddeus will live with knowing that his test, however necessary, cost him the last chance at the family life Margaret wanted before she died, chasing the very thing he's now teaching Cassandra to value less. Outside his window, Manhattan continues its relentless pursuit of more money, more status, more success, more everything except the simple human connection that no amount of wealth can purchase or guarantee. Thaddeus built an empire here, created jobs and saved lives and accumulated billions. But sitting alone in his 60-floor penthouse surrounded by expensive art and imported furniture and all the trappings of success, he can't quite shake the feeling that everyone involved in last night's revelation lost something irretrievable. Cassandra lost the man who loved her. Thaddeus lost the belief that someone could. And maybe in the end, that's the real consequence they'll both live with: not anger or revenge or even regret, but just the quiet acknowledgement that some bridges once burned leave everyone standing on opposite shores, wondering if the fire was worth the isolation it created. The truth doesn't need revenge. It just needs patience. And time. Thaddeus thinks signing his $40 million contract with hands that built empires, but couldn't build the one thing that actually matters. Time to learn what comes after truth reveals everything and leaves nothing but the cost of being right.